Satnam, and welcome to the intro to Ayurveda. What we'll do before we get started is both of you know our Mangala Charan Adgare Name, Jugat Gare Name. We'll just tune in with that to put us in the flow and the vibe of connection. So close your eyes, sitting up nice and tall. And let us just take a few deep breaths together as we inhale deep. Exhale. Inhale deep again. Exhale. Inhale to begin. Adgure Nume, Jugat Gure Nume, Sat Gure Nume, Siri Gurudeve Name. Adgure Nume, Jugat Gure Nume, Sat Gure Nume, Siri Gurudeve Name. Adgure Nume, Jugat Gure Nume, Sat Gure Nume, Siri Gurudeve Name. Inhale deep and exhale. Thank you both again. So with this particular course, we've got a chock full of information that we're going to go through. This is just an hour course, or an hour clinic is what we call it. And the piece of Ayurveda that we will be speaking about is how do we use this information from its holistic perspective to help navigate our interactions with people, our into hobbies that we do based on our dosha, and just a plethora of things. What colors are the best colors for us? A lot of times when you hear about Ayurveda, people talk about it from the food perspective because it is a way to look at, like, how do we nourish ourselves? How do we keep ourselves healthy? But they don't really go off into all of the other things that knowing Ayurveda and the basics of Ayurveda can actually help to really have us a great whole picture of how the world works and how we work with the world and all living things. So the purpose of this course is to help to get you to thinking bigger about Ayurveda instead of just nutrition. So we might touch on nutrition, but we're not going to really spend a lot of time there. It may be like 2 seconds, which may be now. We'll see how it goes. But I have found looking at Ayurveda from this perspective so profound, even from the type of jewelry I wear to the type of shoes I wear to the type of pens I work with. It's really comprehensive in that way once you understand the basics. And so that's what we're going to do today. Now, part of your pre-work was to identify your through a body constitution questionnaire, or what is called Prakriti in Ayurvedic circles. So you may, if you go off reading, you may see that term, and it just means body constitution, your makeup. And just to kind of step back, and we'll go into this in great detail, is that everything that is living has a representation of the 5 elements. In Ayurveda, those 5 elements are ether, air, fire, water, earth. They go from very light to very dense. Very light meaning ether, very dense meaning earth. And that we have a combination of all of those things within us. And what the questionnaire is designed to do is to find out which you have the most of. Because whatever you have the most of, what you have the least of is what you use to balance out. Does that make sense? So one of the mottos, and you'll see it in the presentation, but if you take nothing else from this course, remember this motto: like increases like and opposites balance. Like increases like and opposites balance. So if you are eating foods, if you are in an environment where your dosha is increased by something in that environment, then you will be out of balance. But if you're having the opposite, then it will raise what is low. And we'll use Patrice as an example in just one moment. It will raise what is low, so then it'll bring all the elements into balance with each other as it relates to you. And you can do that through food, or you could do that through what is in your surroundings. All in like what type of incense you may burn, or you may spray, or however that kind of calming smell shows up for you, because there's different ways based on your dosha how you will receive that smell to create balance in your elements. Now, this may sound a little complicated now, but by the time we finish, you'll totally understand what I just said. Okay, so Patrice, we'll use you as an example. You've done your questionnaire already. So share with us what your numbers are. You can put them in the chat if you want to, too.
Okay, let's see. A, I have 8.
Mm-hmm.
P, 1.
Mm-hmm.
V, 11. C, 6. B, 4.
Okay, so here's what I'll tell you, because I probably didn't say it correctly in the video, is that we're just looking at P, V's, and K's. So even though like it had A and then like V and then the statement, right? So when you tally them up, you're tallying them by V, P, and K. So if you did like all your A's, which should be also the same as V, what that number is. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so I did it incorrectly. Okay, so let me see. Say that again.
Okay. So what you look at is your A. So the questions go A, B, C, and then it goes A is V, B is P, and C is K.
Okay,
Do you know what I mean?
so let
So
you know,
they're not separate.
I'm gonna type it in the chat
Okay.
so I can be clear.
And let me see if I
So maybe
can
P.
find the questionnaire so we can show you.
Okay.
Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it's not so confusing.
I have a visual.
All right. So if you look at the form here and you see how it says A and then V and then the statement. So we're really looking at, so A equals V, B equals P, and C equals K. So
Okay.
so even if you did a total of all the A's and all the B's and all the C's, that still would give you A equals V. So if you had like 12 A's, that would equal 12 V's. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so I need to recalculate. But I did put it in the chat. Hold on.
Okay. And the one thing about the questionnaire, which is, happens as humans, we think, okay, well, P sounds better, so I'm going to circle that one, when it may not be who you truly are in your tendencies over the course of your life. So it really makes you go in and dig in deep and think about, okay, you know, physically I am a kapha, but in my mental capacity, I'm a pitta. So my dosha is kapha pitta. And it does kind of a little bit matter which one comes first, because I have in this questionnaire, I have more Ks than I have anything else, but the pitta is right close. So if I had like 14 kaphas, I had 13 pittas. So that means that I'm dual dosha. dual meaning two, doshas that have elements that are practically the same. So then the dosha that I'm missing, that I need to be aware of, is the vata elements, the ether and the air. Does that make sense? And that if I have vata components, vata components in my world, then that means I will now be more balanced. So what that might look like is I might need to move more because I have a tendency to be sedentary. I can sit for hours and it's not a problem for me. And so what I have to do is try to, to move and to work out. Workout is very important for me, but the type of workout is also very important. All right, so I'm going to take the questionnaire down. Any questions about the questionnaire? Yes, Siri Tatar.
Yeah, the when you're evaluating yourself, it's throughout your whole lifetime or the state you're in now. It's like when I was 9, I was thin and active, and now I'm different. So I'm then looking at the viewpoint of how I am now.
You look at it from the vantage point of over the course of your life, what has been a consistent element, what has been your consistent tendency. So like, sure, weight might be something, that may shift, right, over time, but like, think about your bone structure. Like, that doesn't change. What goes around your bone structure change. Are your muscles, can you feel that they're kind of dense and thick, or are they kind of, light and a little smaller? Like, for me, my bones are a lot bigger, so that also determines my well builtness, right? But if I had a smaller wrist, I'd probably be on the vata side of things. So that's another way that some of those things that, may change over the course of time, with like weight or age or things like that. Like, we were all pretty active as we were kids, but what kind of activity did you enjoy versus what you didn't enjoy? Because some of that also is intuitive and instinctively in line with your dosha. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay. Great questions. All right, let's see what we got here in the chat for Patrice. All right. Oh, you're on mute, my love.
Yeah, and as I was looking at what I have, I
Mm-hmm.
was all over the place. I got some A's, I have some B's. So I wasn't even, I don't think I was consistent in even my calculation, if I understand it correctly.
Right. So let's see. So if you did your V, you might have like I don't even see. So you had like no kapha in you.
Is that what that means?
Let's see.
I was just going to do it over.
Yeah, would you? Because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to decipher. Because if you had like 8 A's and then 11 V's, then you counted your A's and V's to get, you know what I mean? Like, the V's are probably more accurate. And then your P, and then, yeah. So just all your, all your V's, circle them, right? All your, all your P's, you know, circle your V's, count them up. Then when you finish your V's, circle all the ones that you identified as a P and count those up. Do you know what I'm saying? And then all your K's.
I'm such a visual learner, and I tried to do this on my phone, like in notes. And I have to write things down, like to
Yeah,
process. And I think
sure.
that's what's messing me up too, because I'm like, how did I even come up? But I think for me, writing is always better than trying to type it
Do,
out. So now I'm just like trying to figure out on my phone, like, how did I can't circle because I have it on my
oh,
phone.
okay, that's
I should
okay.
have done it the way that works best for me, but just
Oh,
give me a second.
oh, okay. Like you wrote it down on another sheet of paper or something like
No, I
that?
didn't even write it down. I just typed it in my phone so I could have, because I'm on my
Oh,
iPad and I thought it would be
ah,
easier. So
okay,
now trying to pull up the questionnaire to
okay.
look and
Oh, and bounce back between it. Do you want, okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't I give you guys a few minutes? I'll put it back on the screen
please.
and then I'll give you some time and you just tell me when you want to go to the next page. Let me get this down.
Okay, thank you.
Uh huh. Oops, wait, where do we go? This is a form that I typically give to my clients. And what I typically do, because of like this type of confusion, or even questions as you go through it, I normally would sit down with a client and take them through this chart. And then once we know that and we have some basic information, then I'll do a report for them, a very comprehensive report that provides, um, herbs and spices that's good, different vegetables that's good for the dosha combination. Um, and I'm just kind of running my mouth while y'all do that. If you find it distracting, I'll shut up. um, but also even like colors and shapes.
So there you got it. Okay. For like question 28, stamina. Um,
Okay, hold on. Let me see. Question 28.
like, it was more like, when I was younger. So it's kind of like looking at, like, or even like constipation. When I was younger, I used to be constipated, too much inflammation, and then now it's different. So I, that's my kind of like, I guess you try to like balance it, like your,
Well, one way that you would look at stamina is like just like what I was saying, like um, from a kapha perspective. Over the course of my life, I found that if we don't look at exercise, right, if we just look at like how we operated in a day, like I could go for long periods of time without needing to stop. So if you're a vata, then you would have short spurts, and that might be like attention that you give to things. Like, I'll give you an example. Maybe this might be a good one to help understand stamina. Studying. So, we've all studied over the course of our lives something. When I was studying Ayurveda, I had a partner, and that partner was clearly a vata because we would start at noon and we would go all the way to 8 o'clock. And I could sit there for hours, and study or whatever. When we first started studying, we would be going and going and going. And then I saw that she started getting an attitude. So 2 hours of going, she started getting an attitude and I didn't realize why. And she like, I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm like, okay. And I'd still be studying. And then finally, when we got to a point in the course where we started understanding, we kind of giggled because then she was like, well, I need a break. And so I said, oh, because your vata is not able to sit as long as I can. So every hour we would take a break. So she didn't have to feel guilty. I would still keep working, but she had that permission to get up and get some tea or play on her phone or just like talk, want to talk or chit chat or whatever. And so that would be an example of the stamina of a vata. A pitta, their stamina will be a little longer, but less than a kapha who can keep going all day. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And give you kind of a sense of that. So, Like we did have a girl in our group who was a pitta when we first started studying, but she couldn't handle me me as a kapha and the other girl as a vata because she wanted us to get through things quicker, you know, with more focus. So that was a really great example of that. Patrice, do you need me to go back to any page? Okay. Any other questions? And like I have a friend who on 25, like with decision making, again, I'm very good at being partnered with a vata, but like for her, she's so ether and so air that she changed her mind a lot. And that's very frustrating for a kapha because a kapha can, make a decision and then or a pitta can make a decision, stick with it and move through. So mentally for me, I'm kapha pitta, so that pitta part of me was like, okay, make a decision, put a stake in the ground and let's move, right? And she'd be like, I'd be moving and then she'd go, well, and I'd be like, oh, but having this information and this understanding, I would go, okay, let's breathe. Let's see if we can kind of lock her into something, ask her if she needs to change her mind about something, and we can, then move forward. Or I can tell her, look, you said this is what we're going to do. And then she'll go, okay. And so that's what I found I had to do with her, so that we can get things done. And often a vata can look like a Gemini. You know what I mean? The flippity floppiest of a Gemini. So that's one of the things that if the person is not a Gemini or have Gemini in certain aspects of their chart, then you may be able to say, okay, this is their vata element out of balance in my presence because I have the balancing component to her. Then I can help balance that vata out for her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, so I have my numbers, my
Okay.
score.
Okay, very good. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Okay. I would totally agree with this for you.
Okay.
So in looking at this, so Patrice has Vata as 20, K, Kapha as 6, and Pitta as 4. So you are predominantly a single dosha, which is Vata, and I would totally agree with that. So let's get into, well, what Ayurveda is. And Siri Jatari, keep working, and then probably by the time we get to some really good stuff, you'll have your account ready. All right. Let me go over here and pull this up first. Okay, just getting this into presentation mode for us. Okay. So when we begin to think about Ayurveda, it is the key to balancing life. And like I said, it's not just about food, but it's how we interact with all living things, even down to the type of pet you get. Because even animals have their own doshas. And if you're able to recognize their elemental composition, then you know what type of animal can balance you out. Just a little over a year ago, this doggy showed up on our property. And I knew that that dog was for me. And I'm grateful to my parents that they let me keep the dog. And that dog was definitely for me. And he was a Vata. He loved to run, he loved to play, he made me move. Unfortunately, because of all the wildlife we have in our yard, a coyote got him or something, jumped him, and he passed away in October. But I realized, even though there were days where I'm like, oh, if this dog runs me around this yard, I just don't know. And I'd have to get my energy up to play with him and to do, because that was what he needed, for his health and well-being, was to be running around and doing all that kind of stuff. So my point with this is even animals have a dosha, and that if you are into pets and want a pet, that even having the right type of pet around you can help you be more in balance. Oops. So what is Ayurveda? So Ayurveda is the natural approach to bringing all living things into balance. It's a philosophy that comes from India, but it's really just it's more ancient than that. And it's a philosophy of living life that interconnects mind, body, and spirit. And so in the Western view of things, which I'll take you to the next slide, we look at a piece of a person, right? We may look at the mind and have a therapist for that. We may look at the body and separately, and that's where the doctor comes in, and we go there and doctor tells us this is going on with us. And for spirit, we may go over here and we may be a part of, this dharmic or religious community, and it's kind of separate. And Ayurveda says, well, let's look at all of it. Let's consider it all. And so it recognizes that each individual is made up of a unique body type. So if we think about some different, let's say weight loss programs, like keto. Okay, everybody, if you do keto, this will happen to your body. And that's not necessarily true for certain body types. And so in the West, we have this kind of one thing fits everybody, whereas in Ayurveda, it says, no, my body is uniquely designed by me, by God, and that it has unique needs in order for it to be in balance. As we said before, Ayurveda considers all levels of the individual. So mind, body, and spirit are looked as the interplay of all of those that make up who we are and how we maneuver in the world. It also offers natural ways of treating disease and promoting health. And so this is where the food piece comes in, and the spices, and how everything that is made in nature that God has given us has a healing component to it. The spices in your cabinet have a healing component to it. It serves to balance out a dosha, and helps to bring the body out of dis-ease and bring the body back into balance. Ayurveda emphasizes prevention. So whereas in the West, there's not really a lot of talk, maybe nowadays, but there's not really a lot of talk from doctors about how to prevent certain situations, but Ayurveda talks about we want to stop issues before they even get to the doctor. And that's one of the distinctive aspects of Ayurveda. And then the other thing about Ayurveda is that it empowers everyone to take responsibility for their own well-being. And so in Western philosophy, it's like, oh, give me a pill and that will do that. But here, we have the autonomy, we have the ability to say, okay, you know what? I am going to do this for my own health and well being. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Any questions? All right. So, just to give you a little background, again, if you decide to go searching on the internet just to have a sense of kind of like the foundation of Ayurveda. So, in ancient Indian philosophy, there is what is called the four Vedas. And that's Rig Veda, which talks about the origins of the universe and how the universe came about. You have a Yajurveda Veda, which is different rituals and the effects of those rituals. You have Samana Veda, which is like sound current and mantra and vibratory frequency. And then you have Atharva Veda, where it discusses body constitution, diet, herbs, disease, and this is where Ayurveda comes from. And also, Rig Veda, Ayurveda comes from Rig Veda and Atharva Veda. And so it provides detailed information about instructions for healing, surgery, and longevity. So even way back 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago, they were doing surgeries in their way, and they were using this information that came out of Rig Veda and Atharva Veda to promote longevity of life. Okay? So let's look at the elements. So we talked about the fact that there is air, ether, fire, water, and earth that make up the elements in Ayurveda. And what is important is that when we're talking about the doshas, and when we're talking about living things, there are combinations of these elements that show up out in the world. And so what Ayurveda says is that it allows us to understand the physical world through the elements, which are considered the building blocks of nature. And so when you think about building blocks, and you'll see these words written in any of your Ayurveda books, so I wanted to show them and share them with you as well. You've got Akash, which is space. And space is ether. And so it's the most subtle and is associated with like nothingness. Or in Kundalini Yoga, we talk about shunya. Or if you've ever like meditated and just in your mind's eye saw nothing, that would be Akash, that would be space, that would be ether, where you see absolutely nothing. Sometimes, to give you an example, when I'm in that meditative space, I might see a black screen in my mind's eye. And that lets me know I'm in that place of just nothingness space. And then we have what is called Vayu, which is air. And if you think about, oftentimes I like to try to draw this to give you a visual. But if you think about that blank black screen and then you see some little dots in it, then you could think that that is now becoming air. So in that space of nothingness, there's these little dots of air, representing air, and that's beginning to fill that space. Then we have Agni, which is fire. And fire now starts to fill into that space and is creating a little more. If you think about that black space as a box, and air has a little bit of dots in there filling up that box. Fire has a little more dots filling up the box. And then we have op, which is water. And so now that box is filling up even more to where it's not black anymore, but it's now becoming a little more full. And then we have what is called Prithvi, which is earth, which is the grossest of the elements. So you see that one, as I'm explaining these dots, one builds upon the other. So by the time you get to Prithvi, that box that you have is now completely full. And that is earth. So there's no space left, there's no air left, there's no fire left, there's no water, there's earth. And this is the grossest element. So they build on each other. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay. So now let's move into our doshas. So when we're looking at our doshas, we're looking at the elements and what elements make up each of the 3 doshas. So let's take them one by one. Let's start with Vata. So Patrice, this one is for you. And see if what we're going to share here resonates with you. So in the Vata dosha, it is the ether or space and air. So this dosha is the dosha of action and movement, creativity, flexibility, and expansion, right? So this we call Vata is the dosha of action. So this dosha has a lot of movement, you know. They're also very creative. If you think in a physical aspect, these are your like long distance runners. Like they can run a they can run a marathon with like ease and grace because they are light. They're like the wind. They're also very creative because their mind really moves and goes into places that where creativity lives, and they tend to be flexible. And that's that ability that we were talking about earlier, that they can, you know, move and make decisions, and, you know, they just have that ability to just move around with their thoughts, but also with their physicality. And they have the potential for expansion because of that flexibility. One of the things you may find physically with the Vata is that they will like lose and gain weight really quickly. You know, their weight may fluctuate and move based on just like maybe what season it is, or what have you. Now, the season for a Vata is fall and early winter. So that will be your September's, October's, November, the early part of December is their season. So what you might find in that time of year, remember we talked about like increases like. So a Vata may end up having a lot of colds in that time period. Why? Because the qualities of a Vata is cold, light, dry. They're also very subtle. Their skin might be a little rough. They're mobile, and they're also very clear. Okay? So to balance out this dosha, they need to have things around them that are moist and warm and heavy. So in the fall season for a Vata, having warm foods, or like Patrice had said earlier, I need to have my coffee, it needs to be hot. And that's why I said, no, drink it, because if you drink it cold, it has the potential to create imbalance in you. And so, hot, moist, teas, coffees, warming, warming spices, warming foods, but also warming colors. So your oranges might be nice for you. Your fall kind of colors may support you also very well. And those type things. And we'll get into more of it. Patrice, does this resonate with you?
Definitely. When I think about, I mean, I was born in September, so the seasonal fall, early winter also makes sense. And I know in springtime, like that's decluttering for most people, but for me, fall just represents falling. So that's my clear space time. Like, just go with the seasons. If the leaves are falling and clearing the trees, like you should too. So even
Mm-hmm.
with my mindset,
Yep.
that makes sense. And as far as how I sleep, no matter what season, I have to have something on me heavy. Like
Mm-hmm.
it can be 100 degrees outside, but I cannot fall asleep without that weight, which
Right.
it might have to be cooler in the house, but because I need the weight,
Right.
the
It's,
warmth and
and
moisture.
exactly. So intuitively, you're balancing yourself out, you know, and that's the beauty of this, is that it's nature. So
Hmm.
it's not something that is not instinctive. It's very instinctive. If we listen, that's the point, right? Um, if we listen to ourselves and honor that intuitive awareness that is coming up, and don't let anybody, shame you into like, girl, it's hot, it's all super hot outside, why you got on that big heavy sweater, or something like that. Like my sister is always cold and she always has on a sweater, and I'm like, oh, that's her vata. And once we finish the doshas, I'll share something else with you about that. So let's go back. Let's see. Okay. So pitta. So with a pitta, we call this the dosha of transformation. And this is where we get our digestion happening, assimilation, absorption, nutrition, and body temperature. Okay, so even within our own digestion, we have a level of pitta, and even in that pitta, we have different. Our doshas respond in different ways. And so, what we find with a pitta is that they can eat a big meal and digest it really quickly, and get the nutrition from it really quickly. What we find is that the season this is associated with is summer, and the qualities are hot, sharp, oily. They're also mobile. There also is an aspect of light, but liquid and acidic smell. So that, like, if a pitta is working out, they will probably be when they sweat, it may have like an acidy smell, because that acid is a part of the fire and the water activation. They need liquid, right? Because their fire burns up, and so they need a lot of water or a lot of liquid. So you may find like these people will be really great on a liquid diet because it supports the taming of the fire, bringing balance into the fire. So, what do they need to balance? They need to be on the cool side, a dry kind of wet instead of like a moist wet, and heavy also. So, for example, I'll use my nephew. My nephew is a pitta physically, And when he was young, he loved to swim. So we tried to encourage that for him because he was really good at it just naturally. Why? Because it was cooling for him. And even though it was water, it was a degree of heaviness that supported him, right? And that it was like not a moist wet, but just a dry wet. Like it was not absorbing in him, but he was just in the pool or in the wetness of it. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we have kapha. So with a kapha, this is considered the dosha of the dosha of growth, the dosha of construction. So this is a building dosha. Um, it's a this dosha has like a nice firm structure, strong structure. It is lubricated because of the water and the earth element. It's hydration naturally, and it has a lot of nourishment because of the earth quality. So this would be your late winter and spring. So this would be like your late December, January, February, March, April, and even a little of May. And so this is the Kapha's peak time of the year. And like how Patrice was talking about how the fall resonated with her, Kapha for me, oh, the spring is my favorite time of year. That's where I feel the sense of moving and activation. Qualities here are cold, heavy, moist, static, slow, dull, cloudy, smooth, stable, and soft. Okay? And the aspects, or what they call in Ayurveda the gunas, they call qualities gunas, that balance is dry, warm, and light. So the motto that we have for kapha is light and fluffy. Light and fluffy things, whether it's light and fluffy things that you eat. So like, even though like a kapha should not really have bread, but if they do, like a croissant would be a really good, or something that's kind of hollow in the as far as what you eat, or like a roti, or like there was in like the Indian restaurant, they used to have what is called I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a puffed naan. I think it was like puri, something like that. Like that was my jam because it was puffed, it was light on the inside, it was still bread, but it was something that I could eat. It was warm. It was also dry because of the puffiness, and it allowed for me to be able to participate in bread, but in a way that would help to balance me versus bring me out of balance. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And are there any questions? Let me see. There's something in the chat here. Putty, popcorn, yes. Popcorn is my favorite. Absolutely. Is a very fun treat for me, and is also a fun treat for a kapha. Any thoughts about what is resonating for you as it relates to that dosha breakdown that we were just talking about? Oh, Siddhi Datar, you're on mute.
In the past, when I was taking the questionnaires, comes out Pitta Vata.
Uh-huh.
I can see a lot of the Vata. Like I do like the fall season. Really good. Like
Uh,
I don't like hot and humid like like the summer.
mm-hmm.
So even though I have Pitta and it says summer, um, I don't know. I guess maybe that's it's not. Well, it would be the opposite. So I would have Pitta, so I'd be hot, and I wouldn't want hot. So to balance me out, it would be uh, the opposite.
Okay. You're coming out a little garbled.
Oh,
So what did yours come out to? You said Pitta
oh,
Vata?
yeah, also.
Pitta Vata? So probably what happens for you is when summer comes, your Vata kicks in and automatically balances you out. Um, and and so there may be certain things that you do or have around you that automatically balance the summer for you in that time. And it could be that depending upon where you scored high in your pitta, it actually could be your mental constitution that's a pitta, not necessarily your physical. And so then that gets into how we relate to others. Okay, so let me take you through the rest of the sheet and then we'll really get into some examples of how we can use this. Oops, let's go here. So I really like this chart, and you have in that little booklet that was in the chat. Did you see the booklet in the chat, Siri Datar? Okay, so put it in there. But this is kind of summary of a bit of it. So let's take uh, let's take Pitta. Since we did Patrice and focused on her with Vata. So if we go down the Pitta section, the top part that's in bold, we know that those are the qualities that we just talked about. And then we also know our build. So this chart gives you a way to kind of look at certain aspects of a person or even like a living thing, even an animal, and kind of determine, okay, they're probably more pitta than any of the three of these. And then what do I do with that information? So we'll go through that in just a moment. But just to give you, move this out the way. Just to give you some examples. So their Pitta's skin is fair and warm, has a little reddish undertone, is soft and is moist. They may have freckles or moles physically, and they may have a tendency towards rashes and acne. So when we are even thinking about the course of our life, in the teenage years, it's actually the pitta years of our lives because that's when we're going through a lot of what transformation. We said that pitta is the transforming dosha. So even within that period, our doshas fit in there also. So when we get a little older, let's say like, 30s to like maybe even 40s or 50s, we are in our, well, like let's say teenage, like late teenage to maybe about 30, we're in our pitta season. And then from like and maybe even to 40s. And then when we get in our 50s on, we're in our Vata season. From birth to about uh, middle teenage years, we are in our Kapha season, right? Based on the growth cycle. So that's just an added piece. And if I'm getting off track, please let me know, because there's so much information and I could go off on a tangent with this stuff in a minute. So keep me on track if I go off. A pitta may be prone to inflammation in the muscles and tissues, especially in the shoulders and in the middle of the back. That's where they accumulate stress. There may be indigestion. Constipation can occur here. It may be more of like a dry constipation, whereas like a constipation in a vata may be a little different. They can get light but moderately good sleep, often overheat during sleep time. They may have a tendency to overwork, but they also have like an intelligence, a very powerful, clear, focused mind. They may have a tendency towards aggression, a quick temper. They may be competitive. So you find that like many politicians may be pittas, because they are very very clear. They have they set goals and strategies. A pitta person may have to make a list before they go to the store and make sure they get exactly what's on that list. They don't deviate from it much. So those are some examples. For a vata, we talked about some of the things that are very prominent with them. They may have dryness of the skin and hair and lips, so oiling may be very key for them, and using like a kind of a thick oil will be helpful for them. They may have erratic or irregular appetites and irregular digestion. Because of the dryness that they have, there may be a tendency to suffer from arthritis and migraines and anxiety. They are light sleepers, but they may be a little restless in their sleep, but have a very active and very creative, imaginative mind. And so this is just kind of like a little cheat sheet of some of the qualities within each of these doshas. Now, here is another way when we talk about food. This is another way that we can look at our doshas and our relationship to food. And if you really understand this piece, you will begin to understand how to curate your meals to support you. So sweet is earth and water. So you notice if you have anything sweet, how your mouth begins to create saliva and really starts to water like, even thinking about it or meditating on it. And that's one of the practices that I like from the Buddhist monks that I was hanging around with at one point, is that you wouldn't eat until everybody got their plate. And so what you would do is sit and meditate on the food, and you would find that many of these elements start to activate within the mouth. Sour, the elements that make up sour is earth and fire. The elements that make up salty is water and fire. The elements that make up bitter is earth and air. Pungent, fire and air, and astringent, air and earth. So what does that mean? That means that we can also use these tastes to help bring balance in us. And it's probably one of the easiest ways to do it, which is why food and spices are so key in Ayurveda. So for a vata, what's important for you to have in the tastes are sweet, sour, and salty. Now, as a kapha, I was always jealous of the vatas because they could have all the good stuff. Now, maybe to you as a vata, these tastes may not sound appealing to you, or they may. But these are the tastes that you want to incorporate in all of your meals in order to create balance. For a pitta, it would be sweet, bitter, and astringent. You would want to create in all of your meals, add in. So we know things that might be sweet, like what's a sweet spice? Like licorice, but licorice actually can fall under astringent. I'm trying to think of something right off the top of my head. Sweet spice. I can't think right now off the top of my head. But anything that would create like a water element, maybe like cardamom, might be one. Bitter. These are the ones that aren't so fun. But this might be like bitter greens, like turnips or even spinach. Astringent might be those things that taste clean, right? Like that feels like it's cleaning your palate. And that's why when we look at kapha, bitter, pungent, astringent foods are very cleansing. They are very detoxifying. And so those would be some elements that you would use. You know, pungent may be something like kimchi. Astringent may be something like, I think my favorite example of this would be like pomegranate seeds. If you've ever had pomegranate, you know even though it's a little water, it's so very like cleansing. It takes a lot to get something out of it, right? It has that earth element, but also a little bit of air because of how small they are. So these are the tastes. And then the picture on the other side shows how where those tastes reside on your tongue. So that's why it's so important to get the tongue involved when you are having a meal, because then those tastes get satiated, and then it sends a signal to your brain like, yeah, okay, we got that in our meal, like let's start balancing things out. So so this is a great way to activate those tastes even on your tongue. All right, any questions there? I know this is a lot of information, but you know, some of it makes sense, and some of it, you know, it'll resonate a little more later. All right, so that is our little presentation piece. Let me put this other document in the chat, and I'll bring it up and show you a couple of things. Let's see if it'll let me do it this way. Okay. Any questions at this point? All right.
Like some of the things that you shared would be that like your copy of your presentation, or is this kind of in the document that you shared? Can you hear me? I know you were saying.
It's a little garbly. Can you say it again?
Would we get a recording of your presentation, or?
Yeah. So the recording will live on, I'll send you the link after the course. So, having said all of that, the question is, how do we use this information when we're interacting with others? So, one is being being observant, especially with the people in your life, right? Because those are the people who you can look at what we just talked about as far as the qualities, and say, okay, this tendency, this tendency, this tendency, and boom, this is their dosha. So how can I, having this knowledge, because they won't have it, how can I balance things out? So for example, I had a boyfriend who was a Pitta Vata. So where we matched was in our Pitta. If I'm Kapha Pitta and he's Pitta Vata, we had a connection in Pitta. So I know when he gets upset or angry that I need to bring in my Kapha element, that calm, that grounded, that soothing aspects of the Kapha to help balance out that Pitta. So I would, say reassuring things. I might have some grounding music playing around him. But I knew that my Pitta and his Pitta couldn't be high at the same time. Otherwise, it was going to be a problem. You know what I mean? So I let him have his Pitta moments, about whatever was going on in his world. And I brought the groundingness to it, and then when I was in I don't want to do anything, I just want to sit in the house, and he'd be like, let's go, and that would get me out of that grounded, stable, not wanting to do anything, because his Vata was always like this. So that helped me move a little bit more, and without him even knowing it, he helped balance me out. Does that make sense? So that's some of the ways that you can navigate relationships with others, so that if you recognize that, they are a particular dosha, and that what like increases like, opposites balance. Like increases like, and opposites balance. So that if you can bring that opposite energy, that opposite presence,